She called the cops on a black family barbecue, then learned who owned the house. The smoke from the grill curled into the sky like a lazy ribbon, wrapping itself around the sound of old-school R&B thumping through portable speakers. Children shrieked with laughter as they chased each other across the Robinsons' freshly mowed lawn, their bare feet pounding divots into the soft earth. Gloria Robinson stood on the porch with a pitcher of lemonade, surveying the backyard like a general pleased with her troops. Every August, the Robinson family picnic was an event: burgers, brisket, dominoes, and debates that always ended in laughter. Inside the house, Kendrick Robinson, newly appointed deputy mayor, was hunched over a fold-out table trying to defeat his Uncle Terrence at spades again. "You ain't slick, old man," Kendrick said, slapping down the Queen of Hearts like a declaration of war. Cheers erupted around them. Plates were full, the vibe was rich, and the neighborhood kids ran from yard to yard under the slow-setting sun. It was black joy, unfiltered and unapologetic. But at exactly 6:17 p.m., while Gloria was handing out a second round of grilled corn, a pair of patrol cars rolled slowly to the curb in front of their home. The music didn't stop right away. Not until the first officer stepped out and rested a hand on his hip, eyes scanning the gathering like a threat assessment drill. That's when the laughter dimmed. One by one, heads turned. Kendrick stepped off the porch, napkin still tucked into his collar. "Evening, officers. Something we can help you with?" The taller officer stepped forward. "We received a report of a suspicious gathering. Neighbor says there's a large group, and she feels unsafe. Wanted us to check it out." Gloria's grip tightened on the lemonade pitcher. Behind her, one of the cousins began recording on her phone without a word. Kendrick's brow didn't twitch. He simply nodded, motioning toward the yard full of people. "Well, officers, you're looking at the Robinson family's 23rd annual summer picnic. We've got ribs, a few too many lawn chairs, and half the local school board playing dominoes. I'd hardly call it suspicious." The shorter officer, clearly newer to the job, glanced around uneasily. He could see elders laughing near the grill, toddlers with ketchup on their cheeks, and folding tables piled with potluck dishes. It didn't match the image in the report. Still, protocol was protocol. "We just need to confirm the homeowner's identity," the taller one said. "May I ask who lives here?" "I do," Kendrick said. "Kendrick Robinson. This is my home." The officer pulled out a notepad. "Do you have ID?" Kendrick blinked, then chuckled. "Sure. Let me grab my wallet." He turned toward the porch, but that's when she appeared. From the house across the street, Mrs. Joan Witherspoon stood behind her white picket fence, arms crossed, phone still in hand. A lifetime resident and self-proclaimed protector of the block. She watched the scene with a pursed-lips satisfaction that made Kendrick's stomach turn. She wasn't afraid. She was proud. As Kendrick handed over his license, Gloria's voice cut through the silence. "You mean to tell me she's the one who called this in?" Neither officer responded, but the glance they exchanged said enough. The younger one sighed. "We're just doing our job, ma'am." Kendrick nodded slowly, eyes hard. "Then do it thoroughly." Behind him, his teenage niece, Maya, angled her phone higher, still filming, her jaw set. And the music had long stopped playing. The officer looked down at Kendrick's license, his eyes flicking between the card and Kendrick's face. "Kendrick Robinson," he said slowly. You work for the city?" "I do," Kendrick replied. His tone remained even, but there was iron beneath it. "Deputy mayor, as of last month. But tonight, I'm just a homeowner hosting a family gathering, like I do every summer." The taller officer stiffened slightly. His eyes darted toward his partner, then back to the growing crowd now watching from the lawn. Some were whispering. Others stood silently, arms crossed, making no effort to hide their displeasure. From the porch, Uncle Terrence chuckled bitterly. "Ain't it funny how Kendrick's a public servant Monday through Friday, but on Saturday he's just another suspicious black man with too many people in his yard?" "Sir," the younger officer started, but Kendrick raised a hand gently. "I get it," he said. "You responded to a call. But let's talk about the word suspicious. What exactly did my neighbor say? That there were too many black folks on one lawn?" Neither officer answered. Joan Witherspoon was still watching from her porch, her phone now lowered, but her smugness unwavering. Gloria met her gaze with a stare cold enough to crack glass. "I've baked her banana bread," Gloria muttered under her breath. "And this is how she repays it." The older officer cleared his throat. "Mr. Robinson, we're going to write up a brief report, standard procedure, and then we'll be on our way. No citations. No violations." Kendrick stepped forward slightly, voice low. "I hope you understand why that's not enough anymore." Maya hadn't stopped filming, not once. She held her phone steady like her generation was built to do, thumb ready to post. Her eyes flicked between her uncle and the officers, reading every muscle twitch, every strained syllable. She wasn't just recording. She was witnessing. The silence after Kendrick's words lingered awkwardly. The older officer shifted his weight, suddenly aware of the camera's presence. "Mr. Robinson," he said, softer now. "We're not here to cause trouble." Kendrick offered a tight smile. "Neither are we. We're here to eat ribs, overcook macaroni, and argue about who makes the best sweet tea. That's it." Someone in the back let out a dry laugh. Gloria wins that debate every year. The tension cracked slightly, but not enough to ease it. Kendrick turned back toward the porch, motioning for Maya. "You getting this?" "Every second," Maya said. "And the internet's going to see it too." The older officer looked at her with a mixture of concern and regret. The younger one just looked overwhelmed, as though he hadn't realized until now how far the badge could stretch, or how thin the line beneath it really was. Behind them, more neighbors began to appear. A few curious white residents peered out from driveways and windows, unsure of what was unfolding, but instinctively knowing it was something they'd need an opinion about by Monday. "Sir," the younger officer said quietly, stepping closer to Kendrick, "I didn't know who you were. I'm sorry." Kendrick's gaze didn't waver. "And if I had been anyone else, just a barber, or a janitor, or a retiree on this block, would you still be sorry?" The officer said nothing. The camera didn't blink. The air had changed. It wasn't just thick with humidity anymore. It carried the weight of realization, of roles reversed and assumptions exposed. The older officer glanced at Maya's phone again, then scanned the quiet crowd. "We'll go ahead and clear the call," he said, voice clipped but polite. "You're within your rights to gather on your property." "Appreciate the reminder," Kendrick replied dryly. As the officers turned back toward their vehicles, the Robinsons didn't cheer. They didn't gloat. The music didn't start back up, and no one returned to their spades game. Instead, the space filled with something deeper, reflection. The kind of reflection that doesn't need to be spoken aloud, because every black family in America already knows the script. "This is what we mean," Gloria said finally, speaking to no one and everyone at once. "They don't see Kendrick. Not the degree, not the title, not the man. They just see a crowd of us, and that's enough to trigger a call." Maya lowered her phone and whispered, "What if he hadn't said who he was?" Everyone heard it. The question hung heavier than the smoke still drifting from the grill. Terrence stepped down from the porch. "Baby, that's why you keep filming. That's why we teach you how to stay calm and know your rights and talk like you're giving a press conference, even when you're just defending your backyard." Maya nodded slowly. Kendrick crossed his arms and watched the officers drive away. "I earned this house. I earned this peace. I will not let it be stolen by fear masquerading as concern." A few neighbors clapped softly. Others just nodded, arms still crossed, as if gripping their own dignity like a shield. Joan Witherspoon had disappeared back inside, but her absence only made the moment more present. Maya sat on the porch steps, phone in her lap, thumbs flying across the screen. The evening sky had turned dusky purple, the kind of color that made shadows long and memories linger. Kendrick stood nearby, arms folded, watching her. "You sure you want to post that?" he asked quietly. She looked up, eyes steady. "You think it'll make things worse?" He hesitated. "I think it might make things louder." Maya nodded once, then turned her gaze back to the phone. "Then maybe loud is what they need to hear." She added the caption, "We were just having a family picnic. My uncle, the deputy mayor, was questioned in his own yard because a white neighbor called us suspicious." This is what racism looks like in 2025. Hashtag this is home. Hashtag black joy is not a crime. She hit post. The video went live at 7:02 p.m. By 7:15, it had over 2,000 views. By 8 o'clock, it had been shared by a local journalist. And by midnight, it would cross state lines. Back in the backyard, the music had slowly returned. Low at first, then louder, as if reclaiming space inch by inch. Kendrick rejoined the crowd. He didn't announce anything. He didn't need to. He just picked up a paper plate, loaded it with brisket and greens, and sat next to Annie Lenora like nothing had happened. But everyone felt the shift. The moment would ripple. Maya refreshed the page and watched the numbers climb. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the electricity of truth finally being seen. By sunrise, the Robinson house had returned to calm. Plates stacked, chairs folded, and the last bits of glitter from the kids' art station clinging to the grass. But inside, Kendrick's phone buzzed nonstop. Voicemails, mentions, messages from city officials. The video had exploded overnight. News outlets from Atlanta to Seattle picked it up. The headline varied, but the essence remained. Deputy Mayor confronted in backyard barbecue. Police check. At the breakfast table, Kendrick sat with a mug of black coffee and an unread message from the mayor himself. Across from him, Maya looked up from her phone. Uncle K, they're calling it a wake-up call. He raised an eyebrow. Who's they? People. Journalists. Activists. Folks who never cared about our neighborhood until now. Kendrick gave a dry smile. Isn't that always the way? Outside, Gloria was already in the garden, pruning hydrangeas like nothing had happened, like her house hadn't just become a symbol overnight. Terrence walked in, tablet in hand. You're trending higher than the governor. Kendrick rolled his eyes. That's not the kind of campaign I plan to run. Maya leaned in. But it's real. This is the part they never show, the quiet dignity, the way we gather, the fact that even joy can be seen as a threat. Kendrick's phone buzzed again. Another interview request. Another tweet. He sighed. You think this will change anything? Maya asked. Kendrick looked at her, eyes heavy but clear. I think it already has. Now the question is, what do we do with it? City Hall buzzed with the kind of nervous energy reserved for scandals, elections, or the two becoming one. Kendrick walked into the Monday morning strategy meeting flanked by aides, a half-empty coffee in his hand, and the weight of a viral moment on his shoulders. The communications director, a lean man named Eli, clicked through a slideshow that nobody cared about. So while the video has reached over 3.6 million views, our polling shows favorable responses from key constituencies. We just need to shape the narrative carefully. Kendrick held up a hand. No, he said. We don't shape this. We tell the truth. That's the only version that matters. The room paused. The mayor, an older white woman with sharp suits and sharper instincts, leaned forward. Kendrick, I stand with you. But you know how these things go. People move on fast. It's only a matter of time before another headline pushes this out. Kendrick looked her dead in the eye. Then we use the time we have. We push for the reforms we've been dancing around. Community police accountability boards. Mandatory bias training for dispatchers. And we stop pretending like this is just a PR moment. Eli shifted uncomfortably. We could draft a resolution. Maybe host a town hall. No more panels, Kendrick snapped. People want action. Not another speech, not another apology. That woman across the street called the police on her own bias. And they showed up ready to believe her. Silence. The mayor gave a slow nod. Okay, let's start with the council. You'll lead the charge? Kendrick stood. I already am. He walked out before anyone could reply. And in that moment, the conversation stopped being about optics and started being about responsibility. The lights were hot. Too hot. Kendrick sat in the studio chair, mic clipped to his collar, the blue screen behind him bearing the network seal. Across from him, the host adjusted her cards, then leaned in with the practiced sympathy of someone used to moderating trauma. We've seen the video, she said. But tell us, what were you feeling in that moment? Kendrick paused. Not for drama, but for precision. I was thinking about my niece, he said. The fact that she instinctively started filming tells you all you need to know about what it's like to grow up Black in America. The host nodded solemnly. And your neighbor, has she said anything since? Not a word, Kendrick replied. But this story isn't about her. Not just her. It's about how easily systems bend to bias. A phone call, unverified, unchallenged, was enough to summon authority to my door. That's what people are responding to. The host leaned in again. Some critics say your title helped protect you. That if you weren't deputy mayor, the outcome might have been different. Kendrick's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. They're right. That's exactly the point. The control room went quiet. The producer behind the glass raised his eyebrows. Kendrick continued. I don't want my title to be armor. I want it to be leverage, to open doors, shift policies, demand better. Because if the badge had shown up and I was just Kendrick Robinson, homeowner, this interview might not be happening at all. The host blinked. Then, quietly, what do you hope comes from this? Kendrick looked into the camera. I want Black joy to be seen as normal, not threatening. I want a barbecue to be a barbecue, not a battleground. 2 weeks later, the picket fence across the street gleamed a little too white in the late afternoon sun, as if freshly painted to cover the stains no one could see. Joan Witherspoon hadn't spoken to anyone on the block since the video went viral. She no longer sat on her porch in the mornings. Her curtains stayed drawn, and her trash bins mysteriously never appeared at the curb at the same time as anyone else's. But silence doesn't erase consequence. On a Tuesday, Gloria Robinson walked over with a pie. She stood at the gate for a full 30 seconds before Joan finally cracked the door open. They stared at each other. Gloria extended the pie. Apple cinnamon. Store-bought. I didn't bother baking this one. Joan blinked, uncertain. I figured, Gloria continued. You might be too busy processing to cook for yourself. Joan looked down at the pie, then back up. I didn't mean. I just thought there was a party. I didn't recognize everyone. I didn't feel safe. Gloria didn't flinch. You didn't feel safe, or you didn't feel in control? Joan opened her mouth, then closed it again. Gloria smiled, but it was a tired smile. A knowing one. The thing is, Joan, you don't have to like us. You don't even have to talk to us. But you do have to recognize that your fear doesn't get to dictate how we live. Joan's eyes dropped. Gloria set the pie gently on the step. Then she turned and walked away, each step deliberate. Because the point wasn't forgiveness. It was clarity. The steps of City Hall hadn't seen this much foot traffic in years. On a brisk Friday morning, a coalition of community leaders, activists, clergy, and residents stood shoulder to shoulder as Kendrick stepped to the podium. The crowd wasn't angry, they were resolute. This is not just about what happened in my yard, Kendrick began, eyes sweeping across the microphones and cameras. It's about what could happen in yours. He paused. Every unnecessary police response to a Black barbecue, every suspicious person call made from a place of bias, chips away at the dignity we all deserve. That stops here. Behind him stood members of the city council, and beside them, Maya, holding a framed still from the video. Kendrick on the porch, officers in the driveway, her hand visible with the phone raised. We're introducing the Community Safety and Bias Response Act, Kendrick announced. This includes a review process for 911 misuse, funding for de-escalation training, and neighborhood accountability sessions, so people learn that fear is not a justification for force. Applause rippled across the plaza, but it wasn't wild. It was grounded, earnest. As Kendrick stepped down, reporters shouted questions. But he didn't stop. He walked straight to Maya and took her hand. She leaned close. You think they'll pass it? Kendrick gave her a half-smile. They won't have a choice. Not after this. Behind them, a small group of teens held handmade signs that read, Our joy is not a threat. Reform the call, not just the response. And far off in the distance, the faint sound of a backyard playlist played again. The following summer, the Robinson family held their annual picnic as usual, but this time, something was different. There were more neighbors than ever. The playlist was louder, the laughter fuller, the folding tables doubled. A local news crew stopped by for a quick segment, but Kendrick waved them off. No headlines this year, he said with a smile. Just ribs. Across the yard, Gloria showed a white couple how to season corn with paprika and lime. Maya led a spoken word circle with neighborhood teens. And Uncle Terence? He was at the spades table again, this time losing with grace. At one point, Kendrick stepped away from the crowd and looked toward the street. The sun shimmered off Joan's fence. Her curtains were open, and for the first time in months, she stood at the window watching, not with disdain, but with something closer to curiosity. She didn't wave. He didn't either, but they saw each other. Behind him, Maya called out, "Uncle K, you coming or what? You're getting roasted in your absence." He turned back to the yard, to the celebration, to the space reclaimed. On my way, the music pulsed, the grill smoked. The world outside buzzed with noise and politics and algorithms, but in this backyard, black joy bloomed like it always had. Unbothered, undefeated, and no longer unseen. Thank you for watching. Subscribe me and hit the notification bell to not miss new stories. Bye.